going to produce water sprouts. And my rule of thumb is for every one cut that I make, if I take the terminal bud out of it, I'm going to get 12 sprouts out of it. That's just, it overcompensates. 12 sprouts. Okay? That tree normally would grow 1.5 feet a year. If we top it, it may grow 8 feet the first year. It may grow 12 feet the first year. What's going on? Well, the tree's under a tremendous amount of stress. And it's shocked, and it says, I've got to get some leaves out there somehow, quick. And so what it does is it overcompensates by taking all the energy out of the root system and putting it right up here. Okay? Now, is that good on the tree? No. Because the energy of this tree is stored in the root system. If it takes all that energy to produce all that sprout growth, 12 sprouts for every one cut, and you multiply the number of cuts in the top of this tree, you're losing a lot of reserve energy that tree needs to survive through environmental stress, drought. 2 years of drought we had. A lot of trees that were topped just didn't make it. Why? They didn't have any reserve energy. There's no energy left to resist decay and all these other problems. All right, so now we've created a problem. We've topped the tree. We've got all this sprout growth. Looks like a hedge. So next time we come in here to clear for the power line, and there's the power line. It's a three-phase line, I guess. We're going to top it again because that's all we know to do. So there we go. We topped it again. Now, instead of 6 or 7 stubs, now we have multiplied by 10 times. And you see all of a sudden what's happening is we're getting all of this stub growth, and that's going to take a lot more energy out of the root system than it already had. The other problem is that because those are stub cuts, there's no active tissue growing when we took it off. It's going to decay. And I have pictures to show you that. But with the process of wounding in a tree, the tree is compartmentalizes around the injury. It seals off the injury. The way we cut it helps determine whether or not it can seal. Okay? If we make a stub cut, it cannot seal readily at all. This is a picture, and I took these pictures. These are years ago, but you can go into any system you want to and look at anybody's front yard that's trimmed a tree for a long period of time. This tree's been stub cut many, many times. It was topped. Notice all the sprout growth that came out of those old original stubs. Notice one other thing. Notice this disfigured ends right in here, all of this swollen tissue. Does anybody know what that is? In the industry we call it cat heads. And that cat heads is where you initiated the cut. You cut it off. It swelled up, had all those sprouts, and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. Okay, what happens is you've got decay working down in the process of this. Wood decay that dissolves the cellulose material, and so you end up with you're losing that tree. Notice also this large injury right here. I've had some people ask me that. What is that? On the inside of a tree is shade normally, okay? So the outside limbs have a little bit thicker bark than the inside limbs just because there's more sunlight that hits the outside of the tree than it does the inside of the tree. What happens if you go down to Florida and all winter long you've been inside and all of a sudden you go down to Florida and you lay out on the beach and that bright sunshine, you sunburn. What's happening here is the sunlight is hitting the inside of this tree that has always before been shaded. Now it's in full sun during the summer. And that bark actually sun scalds. It sunburns. And it kills the tissue. And so we've had a tree that's got a tremendous amount of decay all the way from this point above. You know, we've also got all this sprout growth, and this is attached to the wood tissue very weakly, so it's going to break out every time the wind blows. It's not like a limb that had a terminal bud. Here's another picture. This is a tree that, see those swellings? That's what we call the cat heads. That's the initiation of where the stub was made. This is a stub right here. This one didn't sprout at all. Why? I can't answer that question. Some of them don't because it died all the way back into the main trunk. But this end was able to produce growth from the dormant buds. That's the sprout growth response. The tips of these branches will have terminal buds. But unfortunately, these are attached to the wood tissue very weakly down here, and so these will break out. So you end up with a tree that's breaking out in storms, has a lot of decay, it sun scalds, it eats all of its reserve energy it has in order to make that, and so you have a situation that's not very good at all. A tree that should have been removed directly under a 3 Where is the center of that tree? It's gone, decayed out, dead. That's what happens when you top a tree. There's no way around it. You can put the best pruning paint in the world up there. That's not going to keep that from decaying. It is going to decay, period. So you cannot top a tree without this decay going on massively down the road. And it's worse the more times you do it. All right. The one standard that everybody focuses in on says, well, when I have my tree top, it really looks nice. See that nice, even round ball? That's a maple tree. Doesn't grow that way naturally. Doesn't want to grow that way naturally, but it was forced to grow that way because it's top. All right. This is what it looks like in the summertime. This is why it's favored. I mean, a lot of people say, that's not a bad job. I like that. You know, this nice shady situation in my front yard. Let's look at the same tree in the wintertime. Exact same picture, except in the wintertime. Catheads. See the decay? Already starting to initiate. All this sprout growth coming out. Is this tree sitting there a ticking time bomb? The answer would be yes. If it has 2 years of drought, maybe even 1 year of drought, this tree could go. Because all the reserve energy was produced for all that sprout growth. There's the danger of topping. Also, it disfigures the tree because we no longer had a normal shaped tree. Now we're getting into the process of trying to make it into a ball. If you were to top this tree again, the center of it would start decaying out. You'd start losing big chunks of it every time the wind blew. Even the owner would be disgusted with it at some point in time. So, that was topping. Non-selective. We just take them all. We don't understand how the tree grows. We don't worry about it. Here is pruning. This is the natural process of a tree. Understanding that these have terminal buds, we're going to do some pruning based on what we need our objectives. This is a power line. We went in there and we pruned out those branches that are growing directly into the line, but we left those alone that were growing opposite or away from the obstacle. This works fine if it's growing under a garage or some obstacle in your yard. You prune back to a lateral. This has a terminal bud. This has a terminal bud. This has a terminal bud. All these limbs are left with terminal buds. What's going to happen? Energy is going to come up and shoot out to the end. It's going to find that terminal bud. Everything's normal, and so it's going to continue to grow. It's also called directional pruning. Why? Because we're directing this tree to try to grow around this obstacle. Is that the best circumstance for it? Well, you have three options. And you only have three. Number one is you remove the tree. Too tall of a tree growing under an obstacle. Take it out. Best thing for it. Dr. Alex Shigo, the world-renowned U.S. Forest Service researcher who dedicated his life to tree wounding and pruning, came up with the process of compartmentalization inside trees. Made a statement that's very famous. He said, we owe it to trees to die with dignity. And what he's saying is we top them, they don't die with dignity. They suffer. So he's saying, this tree is too large for this situation, needs to come out. Let's put a tree more appropriate so we don't have to mess with it. Okay? First option is remove it. Second option is we can top it. We'd end up with it dying in the process over a period of years, all that decay. The third process is we could try to prune it to grow around the power line. Which one's better? Your choice. If it's your tree. There's the response to this tree. When you lateral prune it, you get much less sprout growth back in it. Why? Because the tree's not under stress. It's not trying to produce abnormal water sprout growth because it has these terminal buds. So now we have some response. The tree is actually trying to grow around this. You know, emotionally,